Hey, fellow casuals, it's Ryan, and you are very close to catching up to us in this twisted timeline. So, this is your disclaimer that this episode was recorded before our Arcane Season 2 coverage. So, if you notice any outdated references, don't worry, they'll be addressed in the future. Now, enjoy the episode and always pay attention to the episode titles.
Really, if you walk away with nothing from this episode other than don't touch the living weapon, then we've done our jobs. Plain and simple.
We're not in the pocket of big weapon. Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 165. I'm your host, Ryan, here with the other host, Hetch.
Yay, 165. It's not a fun number at all, but we can hype it up, right?
It is a number. I mean, 6 is bigger than 5, and I don't know. All right, so housekeeping up top, you can listen to us everywhere. Visit us at podcastcore.com. For all of our info, email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Remember, that's podcast COR. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. We appreciate it. And then leave a like and comment wherever you listen. But the easiest way how we've gotten this far is word of mouth. So tell a friend to share the wisdom of the pack by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Oh, man. And have we got a great episode as far as to show the wisdom of the pack.
Yeah.
This is a fun one because it's been a while since we talked about like one of the newer characters for League.
Yeah.
So like today we're going to be talking about Naafiri.
Yeah, Naafiri, and this is one of the characters that kind of came and went as far as people paying attention, because when she was released, it was kind of out of nowhere. There wasn't much fanfare up to it, and then it came out, was broken as all hell, got nerfed, and then forgotten about. But as far as the story, this is one of those stories that I feel is important, but placed on a character where people wouldn't expect it. And you'll understand as we get towards the end. If you've read the title, you're probably also confused because the title of this episode is Solidarity Forever. And this is written by John O'Brien. Once again, one of the big three of Riot writers and formerly the Avatar, The Last Airbender writer, as we brought up before. So when you see his name, you can pretty much depend. He's done a lot of work, and he's doing more work for 2XKO as well on the writing side. But we know to expect greatness when we see his name attached to one of these stories, specifically this bio.
And I'm very excited to cover one of his stories again, because it's been a few episodes since we got a John O'Brien story. So it's like, heck yeah, hit me with it.
All right, let's get into it. Story best told in 3 parts. So we start with part 1, and we're back in the sands of Shurima, where we spend plenty of time. But this is centuries in the past, where Naafiri is trapped in a crypt waiting, just sitting there waiting. And specifically, Naafiri is a Darkin. We've talked about Darkins before, and a Darkin soul is trapped in usually a living weapon, and we'll get into that in a minute. But hers is trapped in a dagger, unable to move, unable to speak. And Naafiri, before the dagger, was a very powerful aspect. Specifically, or not an aspect, but a Darkin that came into contact with an aspect, specifically an older aspect known as Maisha, who was the Twilight aspect before Zoe was. I know that was all confusing. My apologies. I should have tried better.
Yeah. So as far as like, I'll jump in here for
clean
Naafiri.
Clean it up.
Yeah, for Naafiri being trapped in the dagger, like are the episodes that would probably cover like that the best would be like our Aatrox, Varus, or Kane episodes.
Yeah.
As far as like what the perspective of the Darkin being trapped in the weapon, because it's like they for those other characters, they were in the world and able to reach out, with the exception of Varus, because Varus was locked away in a shrine or in a temple. And Naafiri is kind of like that, where Naafiri was put in a tomb. And so it's like, not really a lot of people coming in and out for Naafiri to tempt them. Because again, if there's a living weapon, don't touch it. And the living weapon really is going to try to tell you to touch it.
Yeah.
And that's why Naafiri is trapped here. But then for Maisha, remember with the aspects that we have characters that are climbing up Mount Targon to like the highest peak of Runeterra to get closer to the cosmos, or like outside of the planet, quote unquote,
Yeah.
to these deities or these powers that are above that will use them as their champions. And we get to see that in the, like, we just had a Taric bio episode, or not
Mhm.
bio, a story episode, but like Taric, Kale, Pantheon, these are characters that were chosen by these powers to become the aspects. But those, we don't understand like the life cycle of the actual deity, right? Like we don't know that. So we have to assume they've been around since time beginning, which means that there were a lot of aspects that came before
Yeah.
the aspects that we know now. Like Kale, the aspect of justice, was preceded by her mother. We know that her mother was the
Yeah, here.
aspect before Kale. So there had to be an aspect of Twilight before Zoe. That's Maisha. We don't have a lot of details on Maisha, but we do know that Maisha was the aspect of Twilight. And the fact that that Twilight would choose Zoe kind of tells us a lot about Maisha. Like, just
Yeah,
to be fair, like,
so Maisha was also a trickster of sorts. So Neferi being tricked into the blade makes sense when you're dealing with this specific aspect. But this takes us to why she's been spending all this time so isolated is because not easy to get to, like Hetch mentioned. And during this time, Neferi had plenty of time to think about both her life before the dagger and her place in the world of Darkins. And if given another chance, she knows that she could be the most powerful because at the time when Darkins were reigning supreme, she was one of the most stronger ones until she was taken out of the game. And all she needed, the last piece that she was waiting for, she's thought all this time, she's figured out her plan. She just needs a vessel to wander in and touch the blade. And if you refer to our commandments, you don't touch the blade. Never touch the living weapon. This takes us to part 2.
Yep. And really, if you walk away with nothing from this episode other than don't touch the living weapon, then we've done our jobs. Plain and simple.
We're not in the pocket of big weapon. So part 2, one day the crypt opens up. Oh no. And the fairy saw this as the moment she was been waiting for, right? It's going to happen. He's going to touch the living weapon. But this man was aware that the dagger was magical, and he came prepared with a set of metal tongs to pick up the weapon and carefully place it in a thick lead-lined cloth. I would be pissed, and so she was.
This is just such a great setup as far as just for like Neferi's mindset going through all of this, because of just like okay, yeah, like there's no telling, because like we don't really get like the actual, you know, a number for the amount of time that Naafiri was trapped here. But we do know that it had to at least be like centuries, right? Like, because the other Darkin were locked away for a long time, and they weren't even as locked up as well as Naafiri was. But then for it to immediately be the first person in centuries to walk in here, already knew the game. It's
Yeah, like Roust was in the middle of a crowded mall, basically.
Yeah.
Just sitting there.
And so the Naafiri's just like, son of a bitch.
So after he picks it up, and as his horse is now galloping through the Shuriman Desert to go wherever he plans on going, Neferi's feeling this despair because out of all things that can go wrong over such a long period of time, the fact that this is the part that fucks up, that's not great, right? Her situation somehow became worse because if you think about it from her perspective, the crypt, mostly an unknowing, greedy figure would come in and not knowingly touch her, right? That would be what you expect to happen. But now her situation is not only is she in the possession of someone who knows exactly what she is, they can also prevent other people from accidentally interacting with the dagger.
I mean, and we get to see that here as far as just like not only being prepared to pick up the dagger without having to physically interact with it, but this guy doesn't just use the tongs to get the dagger out of there. Like it's comes prepared with another, a lead lined cloth, but
Yeah.
basically another container, another prison cell, just to be like, no,
Portable
no, we're
prison.
now you're still in prison, but now you're mobile, right? Like,
It's called progress. It's called the future hatch. Tech is taking over. So, um, at this moment, still in despair, she has one final opportunity that presents itself. In the distance, as this guy's riding his horse, it's starting to get nightfall, right? Because about he took this around like sunset. So now he's riding at night. In the distance, Neferi could sense a pack of dune hounds stalking the man and the horse and can hear them howling in anticipation for what could possibly be a meal. And Neferi tried to call out to them with pure malicious intent, because remember, she can't speak, can't talk, can't do anything. She's trapped in this blade. But she's hoping that the situation is the man encounters the beast some way and slips up and touches her during the altercation, and then she can take over and figure it out from there. And this takes us to part 3.
and like it's a sound plan, right? Because I mean, especially like if you can create a life and death scenario for your captor, like, we joke about like don't touch the living weapon, but at the end of the day, a living weapon is still a weapon,
Yeah,
right? Like you can just get to a point where it's like try to create a scenario to where they don't have a choice.
yeah.
Just like, okay, I either use this or I die. And so it's a sound plan and it will totally work, right?
Yeah, just like this, because everything has worked out for her this far, right? So, so what ends up happening suddenly is the hounds do catch up. They appear near the man and the horse, and the altercation begins. He pulls his sword, but he's very careful to keep the dagger concealed in his other hand while attempting to keep the other one safe. And to keep himself and the horse alive with his sword, right? So his weapon. Unfortunately, because of the amount of hounds and them working together in this pack formation with the snapping jaws everywhere, the hounds end up taking down the man and the horse and eating everything. And there's this sudden rush of senses by Naafiri, and she's confused because it didn't work out the way she wanted, but yet she's sentient again. Well, she's been sentient, but now she's like feeling air,
Yeah.
has
Like
senses.
it's less about Neferi becoming sentient and more that the senses of life have returned.
Yeah,
So like the instead of just being sentient, it is now like I can feel the desert air. I
yeah,
can I can feel, I can see, I can
yeah.
smell. So it's like, okay, something's changed. Something has changed. And it's like, okay, cool. That means the plan worked. The man touched the blade, right? Like that. This is all good. So
Yeah.
what is it that Neferi senses?
Well, she tastes of blood, like the metallic of blood in her mouth. And it's like,
Uh
wait, what? Oh no, wait. And it's just not just her mouth, it's her mouths. Multiple. And then she looks around and she sees herself. But like she sees herself from another perspective as well. And then she sees herself again. And it's herself. She's more than one place. And she is baffled because and this is what's great is because even as a demon entity, right, demonic form, that's already supernatural. This is confusing the fuck out of her. And then she notices that she's not just one of the hounds, she's all of the hounds. And she's starting to lose the concept of what a self is. And she's more of a hive mind. So if you've read, anything from Illithids in the Forgotten Realms, and you've seen Ari Salvatore has gone above and beyond in describing that in as many ways as you can. So if you need a reference, go read that stuff
yeah. That
to give
is
you the concept of how this works.
yeah.
But yeah,
That
she's become a hive mind of hounds.
yeah, like which is already like this it's a lot of fun to look at this as far as just like the like from a lore perspective, right?
Yeah.
Of trying to like figure out like the answers because it's like how in the world does Neferi go into like the hive mind? Like so did like the dagger break and they all ate pieces of the dagger? Did like just the pack leader eat the dagger? And
Yeah.
then, like, because the pack leader ate the dagger, like, she just was able to take over all of them? Or, like, did they just touch the dagger and the dagger's now just,
All right.
like,
All right.
a useless thing? Who
Hold off.
knows?
Hold off. Hold off. Hold off.
Uh,
We'll get there. We'll save the
but
juicy stuff for the end, baby.
you're disgusting.
Yeah, if you want to know, you want to hear the discussion, you got to stick around to the end. All right, that's when the juicy discussions happen. But she's like, okay, cool. I'm alive. I mean, she's always been alive. You get what I'm saying. I'm not doing well at this, but
She's material again.
she's material. Well, technically, okay. Wait.
And she is in a material world. Okay. The show's off the rails.
It's off the rails, man. But yeah, okay. She's like, okay, I've accepted whatever this is. But now she's like, wait a minute, I'm a fucking dog. I smell bad. I have fleas, and I have this sense of companionship. What the fuck is going on?
This is so good because it's just like all of this started from like one bad thing happening
Yeah.
to Naafiri, right? Like
Yeah.
getting tripped
The
by
fairy's bad hair day.
Yeah. But it's like got tricked by the aspect of Twilight, gets trapped in a tomb. The dude who finds her is prepared, like knows the rules, and then instead of being able to get the dude hunted down to the point where he uses the dagger, he just gets killed, and now she's a dog, like she, like a literal pack of dogs. And then instead of being able to like take over a human host to conquer the world, she's now experiencing love and companionship. This is the highest level of BS that the Fury could ever hope for. And I love like just how angry she is about it, because it like goes into details of like how she's noticing the smell
Yeah.
and noticing the fleas and noticing all of the bodily functions
Yeah.
and noticing how the other dogs are feeling, and she's like,
Uh-huh.
this sucks.
Because all those dogs have to shit and piss, like it has to suck. But the thing about it is, as she starts to play the role, right? She has to still hunt. She has to start doing things a mortal body needs to do. She notices something is that everything she does is effective because of the collective action. It's not just her alone in a single host. And then she has an epiphany. She has this realization that this just didn't apply to Dune Hounds. This applied to everything, ants, humans, and even, thinking back, the Darken. And she remembers having that epiphany that the Darken were on top, right? They had a place in the world, despite it being an evil, demonic place, they had a place where they had power and they wielded it. And the reason they lost that place in the hierarchy was because they spent all their time with grudges and personal endeavors and petty fights, and that caused them all to ultimately fall to grace and be entombed. And now she's like, well, shit, my goal now is to find my siblings and teach them the ways of collective action. She literally wants to unionize the Darkens. And that is amazing writing. I'm sorry. The wisdom of the pack. Solidarity forever, man.
And like, but it's really cool is like, because there's also like, like real world counterparts to like go with it, because it's like, I enjoy like the emphasis on like the pack mentality here. Not like it, because it's more of an emphasis on the pack mentality instead of the hive mind. Because like you brought up Salvatore, and then of course like it's been gaining a lot of popularity, but Warhammer has the Tyranids. So a lot of things have looked at like the hive mind and how that would affect an individual. Whereas it takes away the focus as far as like working in a pack. And for anyone who has gotten intoxicated and gone on, the YouTube spiral of watching animal stuff, like there's a lot of really fun content out there. And what's the channel? Casual Geographic. They like he has an episode talking about wild dogs in Africa, and wild dogs in Africa are statistically the most dangerous thing to run into in the wild. Like wild dogs in Africa are statistically the most successful hunters, and it's because of their ability to work as a team.
Hmm.
Like teamwork legitimately makes the dream work, and that's what Naafiri figured out here. Like, oh my god, if we all work together, we could be unstoppable. Yeah, start the union at work. Band together. We're all in this together. It's the answer. It's the answer. And statistically speaking, it's correct. Like
It's
the math,
natural.
the math is there.
Speaking of animals, that's one of the issues with octopi or an octopus is that although in the ocean they are some of the smartest creatures in general because of their many brains and hearts and all that stuff, and their dexterity and their ability to adapt to their environment very well, they have two big flaws. One, they don't have a very long lifespan, but even with that lifespan they are unable to work together. You will never see two of them working in tandem to do anything,
Yep.
and that leads to them never climbing the hierarchy in the ocean. They just exist, die, and then they're forgotten.
Yeah.
And them even surviving in certain areas is a coin flip because of that situation.
I
So
mean, that's
yeah,
that's why you see orcas like being like
yep.
consistently one of the more dangerous creatures out there because they work as a pack. And then like a cousin to the octopus, the squid, like Humboldt squids hunt in packs,
Hmm.
and they can hunt in packs of over 1,000 or like tens of thousands. That's a lot of really scary, intelligent creatures.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
we should
So
work together. We should work together.
what? I don't believe you. I'm not convinced. So that's where our story ends, in a brilliant fashion. And this takes us to what Hetch was talking about earlier, was how did this hive mind thing even happen, right? With the daggers. And there's a couple of ways you can go with it. Is the way it's written, it's obvious, you know, John O'Brien wanted to leave a bit of room for you to have fun with. But he does give us the line that they ate everything. There was nothing left when they devoured the horse and the man. He clearly states that, which means that any gear they had, whatever they had, was eaten. And this is also the Shuriman Desert post all of the shenanigans we've talked about in our Acacia stories and all that. So go listen to those and you'll understand more. But you now have a place where magical energy is rampant. You have a place where there's not much life, and you have these animals that are working together to survive by any means necessary. I think it's a possibility that they just ate pieces of the dagger and got to a
But
bunch of them, and ultimately you have the magic of a darken, the magic of a blade that conceals it, the magics of the land that the animal exists, and then possible magic that exists in the animal being raised or living in that area for so long. There's just all that
right.
magic, and we've talked about magical pregnancies. We always do. When you put that much magic in a fucking cauldron, dog, you're gonna get something out of it.
And in this case, we got a really pissed off Darkin about fleas. Like, like and for me, it's just more of like because like I really do enjoy the ambiguity of
Yeah.
it because it's like okay, like how in the world like did the dagger get eaten? Because it's like because as far as like with these desert dogs, like we don't get a lot of like descriptions and details about them.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, like this is all post, you know, 18 ruinations. So like there's magics all over the place, and we already see from like the life that's near Shurima, so like in Ishtal. We
Mhm.
see a lot of magical creatures there. I mean,
Yep.
like you could like listen to our Nidalee episode just talking about like the creatures that exist there and how like even the residents of Runeterra don't understand it all. So that's the neighbors.
Yeah.
And then even if there wasn't all of like this ridiculous amount of magic that happened to the land of Shurima, um, this is also post Acacia. So we have creatures like Rek'Sai and
Mhm.
Voidlings that call Shurima home now. And so this is a creature that is able to survive in that kind
Yep.
of land. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't blow my mind at all that like they would be capable of eating a dagger. But it's more of like, okay, how in the world? Like, like, was it just like one solid piece, or did like it just
Yeah.
shatter into pieces? And like that's where it kind of becomes fun of like thinking about that. Because
Yeah.
I personally, I would think that it's more like the alpha probably ate like the whole body of the dagger, and then it's like because of the magic in the area, that's how they developed like a cohesive hive mind
Yep.
instead of just being like a pack leader, right?
Yeah.
um and then it's like, okay, well, since the alpha ate it, now that hive mind Naafiri can tap into it, but instead of can tap into it, oh crap, I'm just consumed by it.
Yeah.
What is this? What is this? And that makes it fun because it's just like Naafiri's having to like figure all this crap out on the fly,
Yeah.
but it works out in our favor because now all of a sudden they become the most dominant predators in the Shuriman desert.
Yeah, like places where because the void is under it. Like so it's a very cool story. I mean, it's a cool twist on a hive mind concept in general, because this has been done in fantasy media forever, right? Longer than we've been alive. And
Yeah.
to take something that's pre-existing like that and have a light twist on it, because usually with the hive mind, as Hedge touched on, like with illithids or like tyranids, usually it's separate consciousness that are essentially tapping into like the same cloud, right? Whereas this one is one cloud that's controlling multiple consciousnesses. So it's a little bit different there, which is cool. But then on top of that, throwing in the level of analysis about collective action, like using that as a vehicle to drive home the factor of, hey, work together and get shit done. That's for this character, it's one of those, I forgot the character we mentioned where their story is so good for the character they are. This is one of those situations.
There's been a couple as far as like
Yeah.
more recent champions that have felt that way.
Naafiri's not
So-
going to be on the back of the box, right? It's not
Yeah.
a character that's
No, and it's also very cool as far as like having because like again, like with the way that you and I are, like, you know, it's very easy for us to look at like the teamwork aspect and be like, yeah, like working together is great.
Yeah.
Like do it. Like we have maybe once or twice on our show kind of shown that we're more left leaning. You know? I'm sure you can find examples. So of course we would grab onto that, but it's very funny that we have like such a great example of like, you know, a story where you can steer into that direction and find that message relatively easily for a character that is darkened. Like this is not the character arc that you would expect that from, especially with characters like Varus. That's like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to consume your souls.
Yeah.
I'm going to become a god again, and only through the power of love have you two idiots still here. Or Aatrox, which is just like, no, I'm going to absorb so much life force that I have to go from one body to the next, to the next, to the next. Like, it's like the Darkid are horrifying creatures of power. And here's one that is like the perfect example of unionize.
Yeah, that antithesis to the themes of that quote unquote race, right, is neat. And that's something that, you know, we'll talk about, something we've been talking about in a while. The MMO. This is a character now, this is a champion that gives you an exploratory space that I would never have guessed in the Darken lore, that you can go down this road, because her goal is stated at the end of this is to seek out her siblings and tell them about this new plan and see if they're on board. And they have their own stories and stuff going on, but it creates this whole other layer of adding onto the lore, which once again emphasize, release the fucking, like, I don't care if you have to employ all of the United States, Riot, you need to, this needs to come out.
Like I'll work. I'll work. I already work for chump change. Like, you don't even gotta pay me a lot, because it's like that's how
I got
life
my
is for me.
pickaxe right here. I'm ready to work.
Like I'll do whatever you need, Riot. Like, just give us the MMO.
All right, it's been
Uh,
fun. If you made it to this part, I'm happy you had fun with us. This has been a bit more hectic. If this is your first episode, I don't know what to tell you.
it was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun, but it is definitely more of like, you could tell how excited we were with it because like we just kind of went on ADHD spirals.
Yeah. But with that, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah, take care, everybody.